Hello everybody, before we start this video I just want to let you guys know that we have a new public Discord server, so if you're not in it, make sure to join in on the discussion, and that's the best place to know when new videos go up and when I start live streaming. So without further ado, let's get into it. Elden Ring was officially announced the other day, and it is the new FromSoftware game that's being written by Hidetaka Miyazaki and George R.R. Martin, the writer from Game of Thrones, the books. And I know a bunch of information has come out regarding what the game actually is. We know it's an open world RPG similar to Dark Souls and not Sekiro, but other than that we really don't know anything more. So today's video is merely a discussion about the things that I would like to see in the Elden Ring. If you have any hopes or wishes that you'd like to see in this game, be sure to leave it down below. So first things first, character customization. Now after playing Sekiro and beating it, one of the big things that I really missed from the Dark Souls and Bloodborne series was the fact that I could change my armor pieces and change how my character looked. I think a big problem for me with Sekiro was the fact that I went into it thinking it was a Dark Souls game, and I wanted to be able to do all these things with my character, make it look like how I wanted, change armor pieces, when in reality Sekiro was a more linear experience with a protagonist. And it just highlighted the fact that I really love role-playing games, and I really want the ability to change my character's appearance, add armor that fits my build and my roleplay guidelines that I've set myself. FromSoftware makes some really cool looking armor. If you look at Dark Souls and Bloodborne, they're all aesthetically awesome. And because Elden Ring is set in the Norse mythology universe, if you would call it that, I can bet that there's going to be some really interesting pieces of armor and equipment to use. And you can see from the trailer right here, the woman who has the prosthetic arm, it looks amazing. So I really want the ability to make the character my own and put my own stamp on the world. For me, it makes it a more personal experience. And overall, like I said, I just like the roleplay aspects of being able to make your own character and customize the weapons and armor pieces and maybe the abilities. I don't know. We don't know anything about the way the combat's going to work in Elden Ring, but I'm excited and I'm hopeful character customization is going to be a thing. But it is a role-playing action game, so I'm guessing it will be. Here's to hoping, I guess. Next comes multiplayer and PvP. Now, if you guys don't know, I was heavily involved in the PvP scene in Dark Souls 2 and 3 specifically, not so much 1. I kind of missed that whole PvP train when it came out. But I was very well versed in the Dark Souls PvP. Now, obviously, if it does get implemented into Elden Ring, there are a few things from Dark Souls that I'd like to change. First and foremost being the actual connectivity and the lag and the implementation of multiplayer. Dark Souls multiplayer, let's face it, isn't very good. It's fun, but it's not very good technically. There's so much lag, and there's so much random bullshit hitboxes. No, I'm not saying Dark Souls multiplayer needed to be competitive in any way, it just needed to be fun, but the lag and the connectivity issues definitely interrupted that fun. And if you've been in the channel for a while, you know I'm a big fan of the Dark Souls 2 implementation of auras, which was an incentive to keep playing the multiplayer aspect of the game so you could get some aesthetic rewards. No rewards that actually affected gameplay whatsoever. It was just a personal thing you could have on your character just to prove to everyone that you have in fact participated in player versus player, or just multiplayer in general. I would love to see these implemented back into Elden Ring, an incentive to keep playing the multiplayer besides the fun aspect. Dark Souls 3 multiplayer is still played to this day by a handful of people, and to them I commend you for carrying on. But with how the Covenants worked in Dark Souls 3, you only needing 30 rewards to complete the Covenant, I lost interest in Dark Souls 3 PvP after around 1,000 hours, and I know that's a very long time, but if the game had that persistence and it had that incentive to keep playing the PvP to earn these aesthetic rewards that only a handful of people could have, I think I would have enjoyed it a lot more for a lot longer period of time. So as I mentioned, to sum it up, I hope Elden Ring has multiplayer and it has an incentive to keep playing. Now this next one is highly subjective and it's down to personal preference in music taste, but Dark Souls 3 and Bloodborne had one of the most amazing game soundtracks of all time in my opinion, and Sekiro unfortunately didn't. And I know I'm bashing on Sekiro, so let me just clarify things here. I love Sekiro, I really do, I think it's an amazing game, but I have no desire to play it ever again. At all. I think the experience going through New Game was incredible, but I just don't have any urge to go into New Game Plus or to pick it up again. I really don't. But that doesn't take away of how amazing the experience was on the initial blind playthrough. It's still an amazing, amazing game, but it has no replay value for me. With that being said, I would love Elden Ring to have this orchestral, huge, amazing soundtrack that got introduced in Bloodborne. The Bloodborne soundtrack is probably my favorite soundtrack of all time. I think it's absolutely incredible, and that is a big thing for me. One of the reasons why I remember most bosses is because of its soundtrack. When Dark Souls 3 first came out, I picked Pontiff Sullivan as my favorite boss, primarily because of the soundtrack. And in Elden Ring, judging from the trailer, we're gonna get this big orchestral giant piece of music again in this game, and hopefully it's going to be amazing. And as a former music student, the music in video games is really important to me, and it really resonates with me, and I hope we get these amazing pieces of music that we can remember. Speaking of remembering, unfortunately, Sekiro for me only had a couple of iconic bosses. Now, we all know some very iconic bosses from the Dark Souls and Bloodborne series: Gwyn, Ornstein and Smough, Fume Knight, Soul of Cinder, Vicar Amelia, Father Gascoigne. All of these are iconic bosses in my opinion, and Sekiro had a few. I'm going to mention Ishin and the Divine Dragon, as they were both visually awesome, and I hope Elden Ring brings more iconic bosses to the table. Now, I'm not saying every boss needs to be a brilliant masterpiece, obviously that's can't happen, and different bosses are going to be appreciated by different people. But for me personally, if it has a couple of bosses where I walk away from and think, wow, that was truly, truly amazing, then I'll be happy. One of the biggest things with other Souls like The Surge and Lords of the Fallen for me was I didn't really remember any of the bosses. None of the bosses stood out. Whereas with Dark Souls, and I'm not sure if this is just fanboyism, after some of the fights, I know for a fact that I had a good time. It was an amazing, difficult challenge. The soundtrack was amazing. The arena itself was a pleasure to play in. And with other Souls-like games, I didn't really have that. So I hope that Elden Ring brings that Souls formula to the game. And it has these iconic moments where you meet a boss, you're intimidated by a boss. The boss arena itself is visually impressive. And last but not least, to tie that in, I hope Elden Ring gives us an interesting world. We've all grown to love Lordran, Dranlaik, well, some of us, and Lothric, and I hope Elden Ring brings in those memorable zones from the other games, such as the stereotypical fire zone, the frost zone. It sounds boring on paper, but the way FromSoft implements these kinds of zones into their games, each of them stands out and becomes iconic in a certain way. Even if that's Lost Islith being an unfinished mess, it was still a memorable experience, because it was said unfinished mess. I hope Elden Ring brings us this diverse collective of different zones in the map. As we know, it is an open world game, and we will be traveling to areas of the map via horseback, which is a first for Soulsborne, Ikiro, Elden games, and it's something I'm very much looking forward to. Moving back onto the character customization thing, one thing I did forget to mention is if we can customize our horse, that would be pretty cool as well. Maybe adding multiple backpacks onto it so we can hoard more items. Maybe we actually have an inventory space now similar to Demon Souls, and we can share the collective load with our horse. But moving back onto the aesthetic of the world itself, I am a big fan of the down and depressive nature of the Dark Souls games, because then do you not only get used to this depressive, mundane look, it also can surprise you with areas like Shrine of Armana or the Dragon Airy Peak, where you have this godlike zone to wander around for a while. One of my favourite parts of Sekiro is when you first enter the Sunken Valley and you move towards the monkeys, because you've just been getting a little bit used to the visual look of the Japanese towns, and then you are met with these giant structures of Buddha, and it feels like the game really opens itself up then. So basically, I just spent 10 minutes trying to explain to you why I miss Dark Souls, and I hope Elden Ring is like Dark Souls, but not Dark Souls. Does that make sense? I don't know. If you have any cool ideas that you'd like to see implemented into Elden Ring, make sure to leave them in the comment section below. I'll be looking through them when the video goes up. And a little reminder, as we mentioned at the start of the video, we do have a new Discord server, so if you're not on it, make sure to join it. It's the best place to know when a new video goes up or I'm live streaming over on my Twitch. That's going to be me done for today. I'll see you next time.